And then that brings us into how does the brain learn in general. And the brain seems to learn in general by looking for consistencies, looking for events that repeat themselves quite frequently. And those events are usually made up of visual input, auditory input, feeling in the mouth for the baby, feeling on the body, the sensory events of the world. And the baby's job, or the baby's brain's job, is to begin to understand and to code neurally in the brain, to map its own brain through experience as to what's going to matter and what's not going to matter. Now, to begin with, it's very well known that, in fact, babies can discriminate the sounds of all the languages in the world. And that would make sense because they don't know which ones are going to be important. Okay, so babies have to be, as my colleague Pat Kuhl says, citizens of the world when they're first born. But very quickly, within the first 6 months of life, babies come to only be able to hear the differences between those sounds that are important in their language, their set of phonemes, and begin to not even be able to discriminate the sounds of other languages that are not used in their own. So in trying to understand how that occurs in the brain is a big clue to how the brain is actually breaking up this system and beginning to what we call represent the individual sounds as neural firing patterns. Now, what we know from other kinds of research, particularly animal research, is something called Hebbian learning. Neurons that fire together in time will wire themselves up. And the more often a set of neurons fire together, the more likely it is that they'll fire again together and form an easier and easier representation. So it'll be easier and easier to get that set of neurons to fire off together and wire up together. And it's believed at this point that the firing together of information in time will bind that information together and say, okay, this is a chunk of information which is occurring on a regular basis statistically in your environment. It must be important. Pull that together and make it easy for your brain to respond to it. And we think that that has something to do with the basic units in which the brain is going to perceive the phonological building blocks of language. So what does the brain have to do to even get to that point? What does it mean, fire together? Well, we know that our nervous system is organized in very detailed maps, which you have to learn, which relate to the features of the environment. So, for example, in the visual modality, we have neurons that just fire to certain hues of color, and other ones that fire to different line orientations, and other ones that will, fire to rapid changes in the environment. And the same is true in the auditory modality. And in the auditory modality, we really, for the acoustics that we are hearing in speech, we really know that they can be broken down into three main categories. There's the frequency of the sound, how high or how low it is. There's the intensity of sound, how loud or how soft it is. And there's the duration of sound, how long or how short it is. And there, of course, are also frequency changes, because one of the most fundamental characteristics of speech is that it's created by moving mouths or moving speech articulators. And that creates very rapid frequency changes that are occurring really quickly in time. And we know that we have specific neurons that pick up particular slopes of frequency change going from low to high or from high to low. So we know we have all of those. And so as the brain begins to hear sound, not just speech, but all the other sounds in the environment, it will begin to map itself in a very organized fashion, so that the lowest frequencies are right next to the next lower ones and next to the next. So in the end, we have what's called tonotopic representation in the brain. That occurs both in the ear and also higher up in the brain. So if we have a speech sound, it's actually pretty complicated. An individual speech sound, a syllable like ba, we just move our mouth, we put it in a certain place like a flute, and then we go to whatever vowel we want. We can go ba, we can go boo, bo. They're all the same in that it begins with closure at the lips, ba. Okay, but the vowel is very different. The vowel can be a high vowel or a low, made up of high frequencies or low frequencies. And so the trajectory of where we closed our lips to get to the vowel creates what's called a formant transition. And basically that is just a frequency sweep. And it's a series of frequency sweeps that then come to represent those particular speech sounds. So the brain's job is to pull together those features. The neurons that fire together, including the frequency, the intensity, the time, these frequency sweeps, when they all fire together, they'll wire up together. And when they occur a lot of times, what a pretty baby you are, what big blue eyes, the B is happening a lot. And so the theory is, at least, that those are going to wire up together. So that's all fine for most of us. That works out great. And you say, what big blue eyes? Daddy has those blue eyes. Well, the duh is not the same as the buh, obviously. This is your dad, you know. You are bad. Those are very similar words. They mean completely different things, but they really only differentiate. Bad and dad are completely the same, except at the very onset, whether you put your mouth together, your lips together at the front or at the hard palate. Bad, dad. And acoustically, they're almost identical. The whole word is identical, except for about the first 30 or 40 milliseconds. Okay? And there's lots and lots of words and lots of speech sounds that are different only in terms of one or two acoustic features. And so obviously those acoustic features are really important. Now the other thing that's really special about speech is that it just keeps on coming at us. Okay, it's fast. People talk, even if you talk slowly, you're still moving these complicated muscles in your entire speech articulatory system very quickly. And it's a highly precise movement that will differentiate what the acoustics are that are coming out. So that when I say, what a pretty boy you are, you know, you've got all these sounds coming out together. What a pretty girl you are. You know, so those are, you have to follow that. The brain has to follow all those sounds and chunk them out, all the individual pieces, and then put them all back together again. So that's the process that needs to be taken care of.